watercolor pencils. I'm going to show you how to use these today. Lots of different ways other than what I'm going to show you, but the way I'm showing you is how I want you to do it. So let's get started. Okay, so we have the watercolor pencils here. Again, like when we draw, you have to have a light touch when you use these colored pencils. And a bigger area is better than a sharp point. So I'm just going to use the side of this to color. And I don't want to use the point because that'll put dents in my paper. And you won't be able to get them out, just like with your pencil when you have trouble erasing. So you need to just put a light layer with a light touch. You can, like I'm doing, I'm kind of using the side. And once you get that done, depending on if it's a big area or little area, we're going to use these for the bigger area. We're going to use this for the details. I would say this is a bigger area, not as big as this one. I would take the medium brush, okay, and I'm going to add water to it. And what ends up happening, guys, is, oops, a little bit too watery, so I'm going to use the blotter. What ends up happening is the watercolor pencil turns to paint. Now here, I'm having trouble because it's a little tiny and this brush is too big, so I'm going to leave that for last. But I'm just going to continue to keep changing this all to watercolor paint. If you need more water, dip and blot. Okay, blotting is nice so you don't get as much water on. Notice too how the watercolor pencil turns brighter once it's wet, and it will stay bright like that, which is kind of cool. So you just keep going along, get the whole thing done. And right here I didn't put any color pencil, no big deal. Just take a little of the paint from the other section and it moves around. But just like watercolor, if you put wet watercolor next to wet watercolor, it will go together. So, oops, I forgot this part right here. So I'm going to go ahead and color this in. I'm going to let that dry, and I'm going to go ahead and color this part in then. Guys, we got to do this fairly quickly. Then I'm going to wet it. Blotting it again. The cool thing about this too is you can layer colors. Let's say this purple was a little bit too bright for my taste and I'd like to dull it down to more of a plum. I could have added a little yellow over it because yellow is its complement to cross from it on the color wheel. There we go. Okay, I'm going to let that dry and then I'm going to color another spot. So, let's see, I'm going to do this background. And the reason I'm doing the background is because I'm going to use the side of my pencil again. I'm going to do kind of a creepy background. And I'm using the side, guys, to put a thin or a fine layer of paint down. Because this is really paint that you're putting down. You're just coloring it on instead of painting it right away. Okay, and then I'm going to put some blue down, and again I'm going to just use the side, and notice I'm not having to color the whole thing. Okay, if I need to I can add more later, but it's very hard. If you put too much down you can't pick any up. Okay, and right here behind this branch is my horizon line, so I can't go below that. Okay, now I'm going to need the big brush. Big brush right here, start at the top. Notice that I'm getting it wet, and once it's wet the paint will move around, but once it sets you're done. So notice I'm just going to keep painting and painting and painting, get this nice and wet before I move down. Now I paint the direction of my paint handle. So I'm pulling it. For me, I'm just pulling it one direction. Now here it's too fine for me to use this giant brush. So I'm going to switch over to this side and blot. Make sure you're blotting. And the blue paint, oh, gotta be, I'm going pretty fast too. You guys don't paint this fast. I'm doing this for the video. And I've got a computer in my way, a computer screen in my way. So it's kind of tricky. The blue and the black are blending, which is kind of nice. Okay, I've got all the big areas done. I'm going to switch to a smaller paintbrush. Do this. Okay. Come over around the ghost. You know, also if you start with lighter colors, I would suggest you do all your light colors first and then go darker and darker, because if you make a mistake, you can just paint over it with the darker, but you can't go the other way. You can't paint over a dark color with a light color. So plan out your colors and go light to dark. The other Mrs. Ward will write that on the board. Okay. Make sure you got it all painted before you are done and that it's all nice and smeared around. There we go. Oop. See a big streak right here. You know, and if that streak doesn't go away, and I don't think it's going to, we might just have to add a little bit more color to it once this is dry. Yes, once it's dry, you can add more color. It actually looks like it's part of the cloud in the background. All right, guys, if you are doing details, I'm not going to do too much with this. You can use one of these water pens. Okay, so a detail would be, for example, I'll use orange here. The trim, remember, don't press hard. If you press hard, it's almost like you push the paint in, and the paint won't be able to turn to, because it won't be able to turn to paint because you pushed it into the paper too far. You can use these for details. And I can do this next to my purple paint because the purple paint had enough time to dry. There you go. Details, these detail brushes, and everything else, these. Okay? All right? Have fun coloring your haunted mansions.